Hello, everyone. Today, I'm super excited to talk to you about the top 5 email clients you should be previewing and why. I have Aileen here with me today.
Hey everybody, I'm really excited to talk about this one. I could talk forever about it. I did a lot of research and these are my favorite clients to test and my reasons why. This is, take that with a grain of salt, but I'm really happy to be here today. Thanks, Ashley. So yeah, I'm Aileen. I'm the services lead at Dispatch and I build a lot of emails for people. So this is something I think about a lot.
I'm Ashley, the senior product designer at Dispatch, and I'm using the product day in and day out, device testing myself, but I'm never fully confident on which devices I should really care about. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts, Aileen, so I can speed up my own testing workflow.
Yeah, I'm glad I could help. This will be a lot of fun. So let's just hop right into it.
Yeah, so we'll talk about what devices and email clients, because they're different things, are best to preview to ensure your emails are rendering as expected. So Aileen will teach us why these devices, some things to watch out for each of the email clients, and just generally how does Dispatch help?
Yeah, it's important to think about the devices. I think people say device testing a lot, and maybe that's a holdover to a simpler time. I don't know, but there's more to it than just the device. By far. And I can talk a bit about that. So why these devices? The ones that I like to test are either the ones that are very particular, and I have here the kind of support for HTML and CSS features, little scoreboard from Can I Email? So green is good, red is less support. So the ones at the kind of bottom of that list are definitely on my radar. And then the other thing I like to look at is how popular they are. We'd have to take this with a big grain of salt because of the way that for example, Apple MPP that just came out, opens are going to be inflated in Apple. I think we can still be pretty confident that Apple is one of the more popular ones to open. That's kind of always been true, even before, not always been true, but even before the Apple's protection or privacy rules came in. But Gmail and Outlook. So anecdotally, Gmail makes a lot of sense to me. Outlook is actually number 3, even though they're at only 4%. So still got to think about it. So yeah, particular or popular. That's what kind of I'm thinking about. Or they're both. So number 1, my very first one, this is no particular order, but I do actually like to test this one first because I like to think of it as my baseline. This is the control. It's super popular. This is Apple Mail on your browser, or I think this is actually, or desktop. So it's super popular and it should look good. Apple uses WebKit, which is the same thing as your browser. So it's actually has a lot of support, the most support. So it should look exactly like the way that you expect it to. Thanks, Apple Mail. Number 2 is Gmail. It's actually number 2, says Litmus. Yeah, so this is Gmail in your browser. It's very popular. It's right up there, number 2, but it's also extremely particular. Its support for a bunch of features is not good for HTML and CSS. So, but what does that mean? What should you look out for? I think I like to look out for my styles being tossed right out. That means that if you have a little typo, make sure you've got your CSS being linted. If you have any kind of typo in your style tag, it can just toss the whole thing out. So that means all of your good styles that didn't have a missing semicolon are gone now, and now things can change pretty quickly. And your web fonts as well. So if you have a cool web font, you're using something really pretty and all of a sudden it looks like Roboto, that's Gmail for you. And that's okay. It still looks pretty good. There's still a lot of things that are supported, but there's definitely a couple little tricky things you're gonna wanna watch out for. Outlook on Windows is my number 3. And it uses what to render your email? Yeah, it uses Word. So it's the same rendering engine as Word. And I don't know how much HTML and CSS you're writing in your Word docs. Maybe not a lot. That's how I feel about Word. Imagine that you were using that to write your email and that's all you had. So that's the kind of support that you're getting. It's the lowest support for HTML and CSS features than any of the other devices and email clients we talk about. And this is particularly on Windows. So one thing I kind of mentioned earlier is like, what device are we talking about? What email client, what version of that email client? Outlook on Windows is definitely like right at the bottom of the scoreboard, but Outlook.com on desktop is like kind of a lot higher. So Outlook isn't necessarily bad, but Outlook on Windows is going to give you trouble for sure. The big one you can see in this device preview that I have is my border radiuses are gone. My font is kind of fallen back to something, probably my sans serif or my Arial or Helvetica or something like that. But yeah, your fonts are going to go, your border radius is going to go, all kinds of things can happen. So kind of look out for everything. Sorry.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's easy like to get caught up in being a perfectionist with your email design. But just remember, you can only do so much with certain devices and email clients. So just aim for, this looks as good as I can get it, and it's close enough, because you could go down this long rabbit hole of trying to make something work in Outlook on Windows, such as border radius, and find out it will never work no matter what you do. So you have to have some give and take there in your email design.
Yeah, I think that like, when you think about your email code, it's not about how good it looks, it's about how well it can break and fall back. And when you're thinking about all the different email clients, if you want your email to look exactly pixel perfect in every single email client, you're gonna really limit yourself to doing neat things in email clients. Like, there's no reason why you can't have border radius in every other email client. And then as long as you're thinking about the way that your design is going to shift and you accept that in your heart, then you can do a lot of really neat things. Just not in Outlook on Windows maybe, but that's not to mean that you can't do something really cool in like AMP for email in Gmail, or, you could do you can play a song in Apple Mail, because they're so supportive of like all the different email tags. You can like put in a little like play button and have music playing. Like, don't limit yourself because you want something to look the same in all the email clients. Be free. Next slide, Outlook DPI. So we're back, it's still Outlook, but in particular the DPI versions. So this means that everything is going to get bigger. So Outlook DPI is, I think it's a setting that you can have that increases the size of things, or it might be automatic with certain versions, but it's like an accessibility setting, so it makes things more readable, which is great. Except that the way that it does it can be troublesome for you, depending on how you've written your email code. You can see that my device preview here actually looks pretty good. That's kind of because of DML. Thanks, DML. It doesn't allow me to do the things that would break it in Outlook DPI. So as long as you're thinking about this stuff, there are tricks, is kind of what I want to say. If you see something that's broken and it's Outlook DPI and it looks really big, then this is a pretty easy Google. There are tricks and like different things that you have to do to like think about your email HTML to make sure these work. But it's a good one to look out for. Yeah, images, fonts, padding, they can all get real big if you haven't set them up correctly. And number 5 is the Gmail app. This is iOS or Android. So this is popular, very popular, and it's very picky. So Gmail's kind of, you can see that like different clients and different devices are showing up on here again, it's in a slightly different place. So the thing to watch out for here is your media queries are going to get ignored. That can be really tricky if you designed your email as responsive rather than mobile first. So some people think about like, I built my desktop version and then I'll write all these fun media queries to support mobile. And that only works if the email client that you open it on your mobile actually looks at media queries and doesn't just toss them right out. So that's kind of what is happening here. This can be really tricky. There's also another version called Gmail on IMAP that does this even worse. But the really easy, not a quick fix if your email's already written, is to just write things mobile first. Think about the mobile version first, and then have your media queries on desktop and things like that. So it's kind of a little bit switched from the way you might want to think about it, but this will save you a lot of trouble down the road. And then I have a bonus because I couldn't help myself. And this is my two favorite things to test when I'm thinking about dark mode. So I feel like I couldn't get away with talking about email clients and devices without talking about dark mode. And if you test on Outlook.com on desktop and Gmail on the iPhone, on iOS in particular, if your email looks good on these, you're probably good. That's the way I like to think about it. These ones will invert your colors. So they grab your fonts and your backgrounds and sometimes your images. You can kind of see how like the one image looks a little bit darker than the other at the very top with the kind of plant. That's because they'll mute colors even. So even if you have something and you've set up all your media queries to look really nice, and it doesn't invert, it just mutes it to this weird, like desaturated version of your image. That's a bummer. There isn't a whole lot you can do either, but I like to think about this as test this early and often. Even if you just have like a mock-up of your email and it's got its colors in it, test the dark mode to see what happens to all your different colors, how they get inverted. It's something that like I like to work with rather than kind of work like around. Like I think you can do a lot of really neat things if you just accept that things are going to invert. If you accept it into your heart, then like you get really cool like backgrounds that can shift and be different in dark mode. Maybe it's got like a set of stars in the background that only show up in dark mode, or your logo has like a neat kind of fade around it. In dark mode, it kind of like pops out. Like you can do really cool things. I have a whole other video on dark mode, but these two devices are the ones that you want to look at, because if it's gonna break, it's gonna break in these ones. So here's my list. I'll leave it up here so you can take a look, but these are all the email ones that I test, that I like to think about. I got a couple more maybe that I like to toss in there, but like these are my top 5 for sure, that if you're gonna test and you're worried about what you definitely should, these ones are my recommendation.
So you kind of like briefly touched on it a little bit in the previous slides, but how does Dispatch play a part in device testing and email compatibility?
Yeah, I think if you notice, like, and you look back at my slides, they all look pretty good. They maybe change a little bit, but they are readable. They are very nice and pretty, and they stay true to kind of the branding throughout. And that's because of DML, the Dispatch Markup Language. It abstracts away from all the email HTML, all the kind of like little tricks you need to do to make things work in all the different email clients. I don't have to think about that when I write. When I build a block, I don't have to like worry that like, did I put the width on this table in a way that's going to double the size of it in Outlook DPI? Because I'm not dealing in tables anymore, which is like, thank you, Dispatch. So DML is the big one. But then even if you're not an email developer and you're just building it with the blocks, the template testing that we have, our whole testing suite, has all these devices. So you can test them all and take a look. But the other side of that is because it's modular and I built a block and I tested it out, you probably don't need to do that much testing at your end because it's already the same block that I built. You change the content, so you can change the images and the text, but you're not changing the email HTML. You're not adding anything that is going to break, suddenly a column's not aligning. It's just not going to happen because blocks are great. And when you think about modular design, that's the kind of the way that you get to save yourself from all that device testing back and forth while you change a line here and then test it again. You don't have to do that at the stage that you're at. You just drag your blocks in, and then kind of just check things off. It's just like you're just making sure that it looks good and that your content works the way that you expect. But you're pretty good.
So I can build my blocks, kind of test initially on the get-go, but rely on DML's like built-in email client compatibility. And then when I'm building my templates, it's just like a quick confidence check to make sure like, yeah, nothing weird blew up there with this like really custom block I made. Everything's looking fine.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. So you're just not doing nearly as much testing, and you get faster and faster and faster because you're not building new blocks every time. So every time you build a template, it takes you less time because you're not having to do as much device testing. So every time you build a template, it's like suddenly something that took an hour is now only taking 5 minutes.
That's the dream.
Yeah. All right, my key takeaways real quick. Check to see if your email sending platform has open analytic details. So if you can see what your customers are opening their emails in, then please use that. Ignore what I wrote and care about what your customers care about. If everyone's opening it in Outlook, then you don't need to think about Gmail as much. I would still check off all these boxes and take the open analytics with a huge grain of salt, because thanks Apple MPP, which is super cool. And I actually do like it, but it's going to inflate your opens for Apple. So if you're like, everyone's opening things in Apple, then maybe just robots are. We don't know. We don't know as much anymore, but it's still a really good general thing to look at. And then don't forget, when you're talking about email client or device testing, they're also different. So if someone's reaching out to you and saying, hey, Outlook's broken, make sure you get from them what kind of Outlook. Are we talking about, what did you open it with? Like what version of it do you have? Because that'll save you a lot of debugging time if you are thinking particularly about which specific version, which specific device, because they are different. And so Outlook's broken isn't gonna be enough information. And that'll save you some trouble. And then the must do is mobile first. It's gonna save you a lot of troubleshooting. Obviously, this is, everyone can do what they want. I really recommend this. I think it'll save you so much trouble down the road. With some clients that just, you can't work around it. If you can, but if you do mobile first and you inline your styles, you're like pretty much solving a lot of the problems that I've talked about today. So these are some of the great resources that have kind of come up in the slides that I've talked about. I highly recommend checking out Can I Email if you build emails, and Email Market Share if you want to know what's popular this year. I think they do that yearly of, what the numbers are for each the devices and email clients. And then us, yeah, talk to us. Please reach out to us if you have any questions, or if there's something you want to see. If you just want to tell me like what devices and email clients you're testing on and how I'm wrong, please do. I'd love to know. I think that like this is very particular to each kind of person and who you're sending emails to, but maybe there's something that's not on this list that I should think about more. So please reach out anytime.
Well, thank you, Aileen, for chatting with me today and helping me narrow down what devices I should probably be testing with, particularly the picky, prescriptive ones, so I can make sure I'm confident in what I'm sending.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad I could be here. I love talking about this stuff. So thanks very much, Ashley.
All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.